We begin tonight with another set of heavy, burdensome, big numbers. Fuel prices are set to rise yet again starting tomorrow. Let's start off with diesel. Set to rise by as much as 13 pesos and 15 centavos a liter. Loading up on diesel could now cost you as much as 80 pesos a liter.
Gasoline, meanwhile, will mark up by 7 pesos and 10 centavos a liter. A liter of gasoline may now range anywhere from 82 to 95 pesos.
And lastly, kerosene is now more expensive by 10 pesos and 50 centavos a liter, pushing total cost to more than 80 pesos.
Time for today's biggest headlines. I'm Gretchen Ho.
I'm Robbie Alampay. You're watching The Big Story. Get ready for the country's biggest hike in fuel costs in more than a decade. That's going to happen tomorrow. Officials are now scrambling for ways to bring down prices, from raising inventory to unbundling.
But the Finance Department remains firm. They don't want to halt excise taxes on fuel. Mobile journalist Pamela Vasquez gives us a front seat to the big story.
Brace for the biggest one-time oil price hike yet. Effective midnight March 15, major oil companies are raising pump prices again for the 11th straight week. Gasoline will increase by 7 pesos and 10 cents per liter, while diesel will go up by a whopping 13 pesos and 15 cents a liter. This is the biggest one-time price hike in more than 10 years. Meanwhile, kerosene will cost 10 pesos and 50 cents more. The Energy Department says it's due to the United States banning Russian oil.
Dahil po sa pangyayaring yon, nag-react na po yung merkado, tumaas na po kagad, sumipa po ang presyo.
The Senate Energy Committee under Sherwin Gatchalian called an emergency hearing with the DOE and DOF today. Gatchalian wants the inventory of oil companies raised from 30 days to 45 days. But the DOE says that will do little to bring down prices since we follow international rates.
Hindi naman po kasi tayo inventory pricing, Yusek. Ang tinatawag natin market pricing. Ibig sabihin, kung ano po yung pagkakapresyohan sa international, yun po ang ini-implement natin dito.
Local oil companies also say raising the inventory requirements will require huge investments, which not all companies will be able to afford.
So if it is going to be imposed, if it's going to be mandated, it may require huge capex or even inability of some of the players to comply.
Physically, mabigat yung requirement na mag-double ka ng inventaryo, aside from the working capital.
One other solution that has been proposed is unbundling. That means oil companies will have to be transparent about the breakdown of costs.
Historically, the Department of Energy sees what these additional amounts are that are added to the basic cost. We believe that we could have deductions in this regard.
But the Finance Department once again rejected calls to suspend fuel excise taxes. The DOF said it collected almost 144 billion pesos from it last year. President Duterte is meeting with the DOE and all industry representatives on Tuesday to discuss whether or not to suspend the excise taxes. Mobile journalist Pamela Vasquez, We Are One News.
What solutions are the Energy Department considering? That big question and more with Oil Industry Management Bureau Director of the Department of Energy, Director Rino Abad. Director Abad, welcome to The Big Story.
Good evening, Sir Robbie and Ma'am Gretchen. Good evening to our kababayan.
Sir, tataas na naman po ng 13 pesos. Last week lang po binabantayan natin yung 5 pesos. Ngayon, 13 pesos. Is there a threshold price at which the DOE actually has any options for something more drastic?
Yung mga fiscal policy natin to support the vulnerable sectors ay talagang targeted, Sir Robby, no? Kung maalala ko, last 2 weeks pa lang, dinagdagan na yung pantawid pasada from 2.5 billion to 5 billion pesos. So, yung farmers and fishermen na fuel discount from 500 million pesos to 1.1 billion pesos. Unfortunately, yung fiscal department natin at yung policy on supporting the vulnerable sector ay nakatarget po, hindi po siya hindi po nandun sa pagtatanggal ng mga taxes.
Okay. Ito pong 13 pesos, yung latest round na pag-akyat and subsequent prices, factored in po yan when we started to consider subsidies?
Well, ito yung mga recent event, this actually started on Monday na sunod-sunod na yung pagtaas at leap and bounds yung taas ng ating MAP price. When US and UK suddenly or announced the ban on Russian oil. Doon lang po nagsimula yan. At fortunately for the rest of the week, wala na po silang additional sanction na i-announce. At bumababa naman from as high as siguro mga 100. Kung hindi ako nagkamali, umabot po yan ng from Monday, umabot yung ating gasoline ng $142 per barrel. At by Friday of last week, bumaba na siya to 125. That is a sample for the gasoline. Pero yan ang kabilis, Sir Roby, yung pagbaba, absence of additional announcement for any sanction against Russia.
Okay, and quickly na lang po, can you explain a bit more on the concept of unbundling? And when the DOE says, when they become more transparent, maybe we can consider some options when we unbundle. Does unbundling essentially proceed from the assumption and the premise that oil companies are not completely transparent?
Well, two parts yung unbundling. We want to unbundle sana yung weekly adjustment. Because we want to understand itong mga adjustment every week kung saan pinukuha o saan nanggagaling. And then we also want to have the power to unbundle yung mismong total pump price. Because there are areas sa Roby na medyo may pagkataasan yung mga areas at to the extent na itong mga local government officials ay nagrereklamo na sa amin. And we are not competent at this point in time sa batas, sa authority, to investigate, let alone require these gasoline stations to provide us the data explaining the pump price. So, yung dalawang areas na yan, gusto sana namin magkaroon kami ng authority or power to investigate, coming from the fact na meron kami ding power to unbundle.
Okay, salamat po, Director Abad. That was DOE Director Rino Abad. While local oil prices continue to shoot up, Brent crude is actually retreating. Gretchen gives us the latest on this.
Robbie, diplomacy may indeed go a long way as oil prices dropped yet again. Brent crude oil is now priced at $108 a barrel after a U.S. official said Russia was showing signs it might be willing to have some substantive negotiations over Ukraine. Brent crude started to ease last week after the United Arab Emirates said it supported pumping more oil into the market. Russia's invasion of Ukraine has roiled energy markets globally, initially causing Brent crude prices to hit over $139. These are the other big stories tonight. Not much of a change in Pulse Asia's February survey, with Ferdinand Marcos Jr. still ahead by a mile in the presidential race. Despite coming in as a far second, his closest rival, Vice President Leni Robredo, is still at the receiving end of various attacks, including fresh red tagging allegations. And some of the Philippines' richest gentlemen in one photo. See how people online are reacting to this level of squad goals after the break.
watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Ho. Vice President Leni Robredo is still at the receiving end of red tagging allegations, with the president and the anti-insurgency task force adding claims.
The Robredo camp has denied any alliance, stating that they will not work alongside the NPA. Meanos Baños with the details.
Senator Ping Lacson seems to have found for himself an ally in claiming that the communist movement has infiltrated the campaign of Vice President Leni Robredo. In his interview with Pastor Apollo Kibuloy over the weekend, President Duterte said the government's intel group got wind of the NPA's plan to meddle in the upcoming elections by linking themselves with the so-called Dilawans.
They have this working relations now with the Dilawan, and the election is the...
For Senator Ping, this is a vindication after the online backlash he received for allegedly red-tagging Robredo and her supporters. He finds it worrisome should the new administration ally with the New People's Army. He said this will set back the government's efforts to weaken the left. But for Lacson, Robredo may not be aware of any coalition with the NPA in her political campaign. He just hopes that should Robredo win, she would not allow the communists to penetrate her administration.
Kaya niya bang i-withstand yung pressure? Sa ngayon, sinasabi niya walang mangyayaring koalisyon. And sabi ko nga, that's good to hear. Sa akin, as of this moment, that's good enough. Not least publicly, sinabi niya, walang mangyayaring koalisyon.
Robredo has rejected these allegations, saying that she and her supporters have been red-tagged non-stop. The vice president added that she does not believe in violence as a solution to any issue in the country. In the end, Robredo said she and her campaign team will not allow any alliances with the NPA.
Kasing red-tagging, walang pinagmulan eh. Si Senator Sani of all people, hindi siya papayag. Hindi siya papayag na magpa-infiltrate kami. Hindi siya papayag na makipag-coalesce kami sa CPP-NPA.
The Task Force Against Insurgency or NTF-ELCAC lambasted the Robredo camp for denying the Communist Party's endorsement of Robredo, saying this is an insult to the population. The CPP has denied these allegations, saying government's information are fabricated. Reporting for News 5, Mean Los Baños, we are One News.
With no formal endorsement for any presidential bets yet, President Rodrigo Duterte said what he is looking for in his successor. In his one-on-one interview with his spiritual advisor, Pastor Apollo Kibuloy, Duterte said that the next president should be compassionate, decisive, a good judge of character, and preferably a lawyer.
Sana na abogado, isang tingin mo lang makadecide ka na kaagad. And the repercussions. Alam mo na kung ano.
2 days after the interview, PDP Laban Vice President for Visayas Governor Ben Evardone released a statement backing Vice President Leni Robredo's bid. He said she's the only candidate who satisfies President Duterte's standards. PDP Laban, however, clarified that Evardone's endorsement is a personal choice, not of the party. Vice President Leni also got the support of Photo-Rich Bulacan Governor Daniel Fernando after the camp of Ferdinand Marcos Jr. claimed that Fernando has yet to make a choice. Fernando cited Robredo's track record and accomplishments as the reason for his endorsement.
The Trade Union Congress of the Philippines is batting for a 470 peso increase in the daily minimum wage rate.
But some officials say small businesses who have yet to recoup losses might find adjustment a burden. Mon Gualvez with this report.
Despite being allowed with 100% capacity, this eatery in Pasay City still falls short of its pre-pandemic sales. The owner admits it's hard to budget rent, utilities, and workers' salaries with their small income. With this, the proposed minimum wage increase could be an additional burden for them.
Pag hindi makaya yung sahod na ganyan, baka bawasan tao or siyempre sa sobrang kulang sa workforce, hindi na rin kakaya ng mga trabaho, hindi namin kaya magdagdag ng mga tao, di ba? So, baka magsarado kami.
The Trade Union Congress of the Philippines is appealing for a 470 peso increase in the daily minimum wage in Metro Manila. If approved, this would increase the daily minimum wage to 1,007 pesos.
Alam niyo po, yung actual petition dapat 710. Kaya hahabulin pa namin yan when times are better. Ito po ay actual compromise amount, itong 470.
The TUCP estimates that the poverty threshold is now at 16,000 pesos. That's how much a family of 5 needs in order to survive. With the current minimum wage, the group says each family member only gets to spend 20 pesos a day for food. But for Presidential Advisor on Entrepreneurship Joey Concepcion, there's no need yet for a wage increase. He says small business owners should be considered in the process.
Yung mas malaking korporasyon may kaya, no? Pero yung small to medium enterprises, yun mahirapan kasi sila talagang tinamaan. We have to give them time.
The National Wages and Productivity Board of the Labor Department agrees to put in consideration.
Sa amin hindi ganun yung objective ng minimum wage kasi lalo mong tinatanggalan ng karapatan yung manggagawa para mag-engage into economic activity.
The NWPB says the petitions would take about 45 to 130 days of deliberations as they look closely into the criteria. For News 5, Mon Gualvez, we are One News.
For the big story in sports, Filipino pole vaulter EJ Obiena expressed his disappointment as he is set to miss the World Athletics Indoor Championships in Serbia. Obiena revealed that despite agreeing to the mediation process, his request to participate in upcoming competitions was denied by Patafa. The 26-year-old refused to disclose details regarding the ongoing mediation process between him and Patafa, but hopes issues may soon be resolved so that he can play under the flag once again. Very sad development for Philippine sports. Alam natin, no, talagang pag sumali si EJ, I mean, he always has a chance at getting podium spot. And he was saying, no, even with the mediation ongoing, sana na-set aside yun para kahit papano, makapag-compete pa rin siya.
I know you've been tracking this. What's the latest in that mediation?
That's the question that we are going to ask, and we need to ask how long will this take? When can we get a decision? When can we get the COA audit? Because they have the liquidation files with them. So I guess I hope things get resolved as soon as possible because time again for athletes is not on their side.
Yeah.
Time for another quick break. When we return. Still with 60% voter preference, Ferdinand Marcos Jr. continues to lead Pulse Asia's survey for February. And why wasn't I included in the picture? This as some netizens photoshopped themselves in a now viral group photo of some of the country's biggest tycoons. These and more after the break.
Still watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Ho. Presidential candidate Ferdinand Marcos Jr. is still the most preferred presidential candidate. That's according to Pulse Asia's February survey. Results show that 60% of respondents would vote for Marcos Jr. in May. A far second is VP Leni Robredo with 15% of the votes. Manila Mayor Isko Moreno with 10%, Senator Manny Pacquiao with 8%, and Senator Ping Lacson with 2% of the votes. The 5 remaining presidential candidates all garnered numbers lower than 0.5, while 4% of respondents did not give an answer.
The Pulse Asia survey was conducted from February 18 to 23. The survey covers some key developments at the time, including the controversial delay and eventual dismissal of Marcos Jr.'s disqualification cases, the kickoff of the National Bets campaign period on February 8, and Marcos Jr.'s participation in SMNI's presidential debate, his first after skipping the GMA and KBP debates.
Meanwhile, Manila Mayor Isko Moreno is still the top second choice among the aspirants, with 26% of respondents to vote for him if their top candidate backs down.
While his numbers have been pretty much consistent, Marcos Jr. says that he remains surprised that he continues to top the surveys.
He also remains confident that the so-called solid north is intact, even as thousands in Cagayan and Isabela attended the campaign rally of her rival, Vice President Leni Robredo. He discussed that and more with Cheryl Cosim at the Candidate Talks Forum organized by Go Negosyo and Signal via One News and One PH. Let's watch this.
I think kaya merong may phraseology na solid north dahil naipakita na yan eh. So tignan na lang natin sa resulta. At ano pang isasagot ko na hindi, pipilitin ko na meron. Di kung talagang ganyan, babalikan ko sila na. Sabi ko, huwag niyo ko iwanan. So pabubuo pa rin namin yung solid north. Ang katotohanan niyan, so far, yung solid north, nawala talaga yan na 86 dahil wala kaming kandidato. I'm a little bit surprised na ganun ang naging numero. But I look at those numbers for one. I tell all my staff, magandang numero. You can pat yourself on the back for 1 minute, then tama na, balik sa trabaho. I don't really live by them. Basta ang naano ko is paano natin, ano yung mga dapat natin gawin. Kampanya ito eh. Marami tayong kailangan gawin.
Sali kami dyan! Social media is abuzz over a now viral group photo of the country's tycoon giants casually meeting up.
In a once-in-a-blue-moon moment, Philippines' richest businessmen posed for a photo, and not surprisingly, netizens flocked to the comment section with the wittiest replies. Posted by billionaire Andrew Tan's son Kevin, tycoons from the Gokongwei, Consunhee, Aboitiz, and Zobel de Ayala families posed with Mercedes-Benz dealer Felix Ang in a cigar party in his Forbes Park mansion.
But it's a Facebook repost by Page Finance Service Desk which drew the internet's attention. Some netizens joked about applying as a sugar baby, while others fooled around trying to borrow money. One commenter, meanwhile, asked which of them buys the ice in reference to the common barkadahan's drinking sessions. While these comments are undeniably on point, some took it to the next level as they photoshopped themselves onto the pictures. The Facebook repost has now garnered 31,000 reactions, almost 6,000 comments, and 28,000 shares.
Can't sit with us, barkada.
Wala ka dun.
Ha? I'm making my way pa lang.
Ayan. Ako, nandun ako.
Talaga?
Tanda ko.
Saan ka dun?
Nandun ako sa buffet. Kumukuha ako pagkain. Sabi, Robby, liga dito. Tapos sabi, kunan mo nga kami picture.
Hindi, pero kasi you've been to, I'm sure you've been around. Ano pinag-uusapan nila sa mga ganun?
Ang taas daw ng presyo ng gasolina.
Yun ba? Problema ba yun? Hindi, pero nalaman ko, kasi syempre nakita ko rin yan eh. Nang usyoso na ako. Ano pala yan? Magkaka-village sila. Tapos regular meeting lang.
Ayun.
Spoiled it for everyone. Well, that wraps up today's big story. Catch us again toward 8 p.m. on Signal Channels 8 and 250.
Please like our Facebook page, One News. For more in-depth analysis, visit our webpage, onenews.ph. Mask on.
Wash hands.
And stay safe, Philippines. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Ho. We are One News. Have a good evening.